It's been around, that saying's been around for thousands of years or whatever. So our $100 wine is going to come from this higher elevation, very steep, 30-40% slopes.
If you buy a wine that was farmed with a crawler, a tractor,
Yes.
it's going to be the bomb.
If you've ever wondered what differentiates a $20 bottle to a $100 wine bottle, we're going to break down everything when it comes to the grapes, the vineyards, the barrel program, and everything in between so that you know if you're going to pay top dollar, is it actually worth it? I don't know. My name is Josh Baldovino. I'm the marketing manager for Lohr, and I'm joined by two awesome winemakers here. We have Brenden Wood, who is our red winemaker at Lohr, and we have Steve Peck, our VP of winemaking. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, Josh.
It's all fun, and we're talking about what makes wine expensive, right? In 30 seconds, what does separate, say, a $20 bottle from a $100 bottle? Brenden, what's your take on that?
Well, it's going to be probably first and foremost is the site farming. Those wines that are $100 wines are going to be from a very, there's an old saying, beautiful wines come from beautiful sites. And so those beautiful sites tend to be more challenging to farm, maybe with slopes. So there's a lot more cost that goes into farming, a lot more cost that goes into the winemaking. We've been working on our signature Cabernet that we're going to be bottling, our 2021. And we put a fair amount of time in this last week.
Yeah, barrel by barrel, getting every single barrel tuned up, excluding any barrels that aren't showing that value or that exceptional quality, so on. When I'm in the supermarket, so the standard thing, of course, is the top shelf stuff is more expensive, and eye level or just level tends to be the most competitive area, $10 to $25 whirl, and then down around your knee. So honestly, I'm pretty frugal person. I've always have been. I didn't live through the Depression, but my grandparents must have instilled some of that Depression era frugality in me. And boy, if I can find a wine at knee high that says Mendocino or Sonoma or Paso Robles on it, Monterey.
Yeah, that's a core distinction.
We all know one of the features of Paso Robles is the warm days and cold nights. And in the Central Valley, it's warm days and warm nights. I mean, it's a great place to cruise Main Street at midnight when you're a teenager, but that's not like, I'm thinking of a movie. Have you ever seen American Graffiti? You probably wouldn't, but for my generation,
A pop culture trivia night, that's for sure.
In the interior of California, yeah, they don't get those coastal breezes at night. So the wines are just a little bit more stewy, like they simmered at a higher boil temperature for longer, where here in Paso, it's kind of you heat up and cool down and heat up and cool down. So you get this sugar and flavor accumulation and followed by kind of a preservation step at each night. And so at any rate, for me, that's if I'm label shopping, that's my process.
That's the one thing I have learned in the last 3 years of working in wine is, like you said, if you're at the supermarket, you look and it says California, that means the grapes are anywhere in California. Right? If it says Paso Robles, then you know that it's only from Paso. And then in that, there's even more specificity that you can get, right? It would say Paso Robles, and maybe it'll say, El Pomar AVA or something, right? El Pomar District AVA. And then you get more and more specific to the point where some producers even have this one vineyard and this AVA that's part of this region, that's part of the state. And so the more specific generally means maybe a little more expensive, a little higher quality, a little more control. So as we talk about Lohr's vineyard, right? We started, 1980? What was that again in Paso Robles?
86.
86.
Yeah.
And there's about, just shy under 3,000 acres in Paso Robles. And so we have an amazing entry-level Cabernet that really over-delivers all the way to an ultra-high premium signature Cabernet. It's $100. When you think about those and the vineyard sites, what differentiates between that gap there, Brenden?
Well, yeah, I mean, those vineyard sources for $100 wines or $50 wines, those are going to be these higher elevation sites. And we talked about beautiful wines come from beautiful places, but there's also, if you go look back, thousands of years, the Romans knew that plant the vine, that stuff comes up on those hill spots or what, it's kind of that are tough to grow. what's that? There's that snow saying, what, Bacchus loves the hills or something like that. So anyway, and that's been around for a long time. And so,
See the bumper sticker.
yeah,
A t-shirt coming soon, I guess.
but it's ancient.
Yeah.
It's been around. That saying's been around for thousands of years or whatever. So our $100 wine is going to come from this higher elevation where it's a lot of, we talk, our one vineyard is called our stairway vineyard, and it's named that way for a reason. It's when you're walking on that vineyard, it's calf burning stairway, very steep, 30-40% slopes or more. You can't use machines at all on it. You pucker even going up and down it with it. It's just hold on for dear life. In fact, our vineyard manager, his truck, I think it beeps or whatever if we start getting too steep or whatever. It's like at the point of the where the truck gets in. Hey, so that's a big difference between some of those $50-$100 bottle wines, those locations.
A stairway in particular, we're not using wheeled tractors out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're on those kind of slopes. We use like what we call a crawler, right? So it's like a military tank where it's got track. Yeah, it's got tracks.
Yeah,
because these slopes are so steep that's the protocol where your tired vehicles, they'll get stuck or they'll lose control of that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think not that you're going to be able to identify that on a wine label, but typically, if you buy a wine that was farmed with a crawler, a tractor, it's going to be the bomb.
Yeah.
So
that's good. Yeah.
For context for the viewers, if you're watching this, as you're thinking about why should I even consider trying an expensive wine, this episode is going to get a little geeky. All right, we're going to talk about vineyard sites and locations. We're going to talk about clones. We're going to talk about barrels, all of that, which will hopefully give you a little bit more education and maybe some fun party conversations while you're opening your very ultra premium Cabernet. But back to the steepness, right? So originally, was it Home Ranch? Was the first kind of central planning for J. Lohr?
Right. Yeah. So again, the winery and the first vineyards that J. Lohr established in Paso Robles in 1986. This after a decade and a half of success in Monterey. J. Lohr at that time in the mid 80s, it was really known as a Chardonnay house. And starting in the mid 80s, the commitment to Cabernet really eclipsed our brand definition, our brand identity more. Whereas today we are kind of thought more of as a Bordeaux house with a great Chardonnay program as well. And the original plantings around the winery on the home ranch were the foundations for Seven Oaks. But there was this hilltop section that always produced the very best wine. It was an own-rooted Chateau Montelena clone that was planted actually prior to the Lohr family purchasing the property. It was planted, I believe, in 1983 by the Klucher family, and who were our neighbors there for 30, 40 years. And that wine was the most exceptional wine on the ranch and was the original source for Hilltop Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon. In 2008, we started exploring outside of that vineyard because we had acquired properties off of the home ranch on higher elevation locations. Those vineyards have fancier clones, tighter spacing, steeper slopes than the original Hilltop Vineyard. And so today, Hilltop is technically a fanciful name. It's not a single vineyard source. Brenden will look at it every year and select the best, but for the most part, it's 50 to 60% from what we call the Shotwell Vineyard in our El Pomar region. Again, this kind of cooler, what we call Region 2, which is kind of on the cool side for Cabernet area within Paso Robles. We have some really high elevation fruit that goes into it from a property called Peck Vineyard that is up at 1,700 foot elevation. It's more of a Region 3 spot, but all calcareous soils. And that's about maybe a third of the blend, and roughly 5 or 10% comes from our Raincatcher Vineyard, which is the furthest west vineyard in all of the Paso Robles AVA. And it gets its name from the fact that it has the highest rainfall totals of any vineyard that we're aware of within the Paso Robles appellation.
Okay, so this is the bottle actually that has been talking about. And if you are listening to this on a podcast, this is more excuse for you to jump onto our YouTube channel and then actually see our beautiful pic. But
yeah, and see that lovely Hilltop, Lohr Hilltop label.
I mean, we're going from the quality of wine. And so we have our Lohr Estates Seven Oaks Cabernet, which is an awesome entry-level wine, moving into the big brother, the kind of reserve level, right, of the Hilltop Cabernet. And then now we have even more ultra premium beyond that. If you get really geeky, and hopefully you are now, you look up a production outline, you'll see clone. To the layman, what does clones mean, Brenden?
Maybe Steve could answer that.
Yeah, they're all within the Cabernet Sauvignon variety, but they're just variants, and so they're variants that can be replicated. We don't grow grapevines from seeds. We actually take cuttings, and then those cuttings will grow roots, and that's how we propagate them. We cut more, and so they are genetically all Cabernet Sauvignon. They have that in common, but they might have just one or two unique attributes. Maybe the stem that goes to the clusters a little bit longer. Maybe the berries are a little bit smaller. Maybe it tends to have fewer berries on a cluster. Maybe it's grows a little more upright, or it grows a little bit more floppy. The discussion around clones within the wine world really starts with Pinot Noir. This is a very genetically unstable variety. We have pictures from our own vineyards of Pinot Noir that we planted, and over the years, just due to maybe a light or an insect bite or whatever spurs on genetic modifications, we've seen red grapes and white grapes on the same vine. So these are genetic anomalies.
Yes, Blanc.
So Pinot Blanc and Pinot Noir really have the same parent, but and we've even seen, it's called a chimera, where a berry, half of the berry, that sphere, is red, and the other half is white in color, like a cat's eye or something like that. So Pinot Noir inherently is where the most interesting conversation strikes when you're talking about clones. Cabernet is less so. There are clones, but where there might be dozens of clones of Pinot Noir, there's a handful, 5 or 10 clones of Cabernet that people really talk about. So it is really a slightly different conversation. That said, we do have a few favorites. 337 is a French Dijon clone that came out of the Ontov research group that has just been
tends to have more pigment in the skin.
Yeah. And it's a moderate producer. So a grower is getting paid by the ton, may not want to plant that 337, but a branded winery like our own, Lohr, we've got gobs and gobs of acres of 337 because we're going to be able to sell that all the way through for its quality. And we're not as concerned about how many tons we grow on a particular acre. We're more concerned about the satisfaction of our customer base and the success of our wine.
So each clone is essentially a different type of, let's just say, Cabernet grape that has its own unique characteristics, flavor profiles, I'm sure even how it grows, right? And it's an interesting mix of what's the best quality to it also. How many different variables are you constantly thinking about? How often are you doing these testing? If you're even saying on Pinot Noir, you guys are noticing this, how, on the backside, how are you finding that all out?
Well, as you said, we have at Lohr 3,000 acres of red grapes planted here, primarily red grapes, in 5 of the sub-AVAs within Paso Robles. We have our own employees farming all of those. We have maps. So if we have a clone 4 Cabernet, which is the Argentinian clone, planted next to clone 8, which has really become a California clone, even though it was originally from France, or against 169, which is one of the fancy new Ontov clones. All that's on maps. When we harvest the grapes, the delivery tag that our vineyard manager fills out for that load of grapes will specify not only the clone and rootstock, the block identity and all of that. And so that we will capture all that. Brenden will direct that to a single tank, a single barrel lot, and keep all those separated. And the blend building process really starts there. He's got the taste of the wine, but he also has sort of that pedigree at his disposal. It kind of can function as a trigger for him because he knows historically that block's done a little bit better. Maybe direct that wine towards really special set of barrels, that kind of thing, and really try to build our very top blends. It's kind of like a pyramid where he's looking at the Lohr signature Cabernet is really going to get the very best selections and with the very best barrels. What falls out of that program will go to our Hilltop Cabernet program. What falls out of that will go to our Seven Oaks. And if we have something that just isn't working, we have our dealkalized wine called Ariel.
So Brenden, just the very best blocks, the very best grapes that is easy to sell and market, but like, what are the key differentiators of those grapes, of those vineyard sites where you're like, oh, this is definitely going into signature?
Well, it has to be house styled, so it has to be a lot of density, a lot of concentration, soft on the palate. Those are the base kind of things that we're thinking about, but also just kind of nuance to aromatic nuance, and very expressive and purity in the fruit. And you go back to it, and you smell it, you taste it, you smell it, and you taste it. You keep getting all this different types of aromatic characters that come out of it.
Brenden and I have made a great team over the years because I tend to taste the wine first and then go, oh yeah, I better smell it. And he's really the opposite. So in my career, which really preceded Brenden by about a decade in terms of our custody of in our roles within the red wine program at Lohr, my decade was really invested in the mouthfeel and the density and the richness, this idea of dense, which is kind of code for dark in color, so that as that Cabernet enters your mouth, it's really rich, that what I call the attack as that wine enters your mouth. And then you go 5, 10, 20 seconds later, there's that aftertaste, that astringency. And we don't want you to feel like you got punched in the face during that section. We want you to feel just that luxury, that warmth, that sort of supple mouthfeel. And so there's a lot of things we've done in terms of vineyard practices and our fermentation protocols to really have a strong game in that arena. Brenden has brought to the party, again, a scrupulous attention to detail on aromatic expression, and really taking each fermentation lot and each barrel lot and teasing those apart so that anything that's got a little bit of an off aroma is being addressed and maybe declassified or remedied in rapid fashion.
So if you take all the clones, the vineyard sites that you are each blending now into whatever the perfect wine is for signature Cabernet or for Hilltop or for Seven Oak, there's a lot of different clones, a lot of different variables there. There is the 5 different AVAs that we're in. And it seems like right now where we're moving to is Stairway Vineyard ends up being could be the next best luxurious Cabernet site for us. Why is that?
Well, it has this proximity ocean, probably, what is it, about 10 or 12 mile ocean?
Yeah.
So it's got that cool down that we get in Paso. It gets that a little bit earlier. So it's a little bit more, the hots aren't quite as hot, lows aren't quite as low. It gets a little bit of moderation there, a little bit more. That's the soil series there is high calcium content there, and it's pretty solid elevation. What's the elevation there?
It's
on there.
12 to 1600.
12 to 1600.
Yeah. And one of the unique things about Stairway is we don't have nearly as many foggy mornings there. And some of the best light, like similar to photography, is that sunrise. Sunset, it's usually not cloudy anyway or foggy. But one of the differentiators compared to our home ranch, where we might have some river fog until 9 or 10 in the morning,
Sits above all that. So if you walk in the morning, you're huffing and puffing because you're walking up the hillside or whatever. But there's mornings where when you're in that Adelaide area, Willow Creek area, Templeton Gap area, and you're in the hills, and you look down and it looks like the rest of Paso is just ocean, or they're with these kind of mountaintops sticking up that are islands in the ocean or whatever. So Stairway is one of those places where you look around, it's you wouldn't know if you just woke up there, you wouldn't know that there was actually land there. It's just all fog with these little spot peaks.
Yeah. It's a beautiful scene to just see those islands, and we should try and catch that on film sometime.
Yeah.
But again, we're the lower elevations filled in with fog, and a property like Stairways up above that. So it's that first crack of dawn, it's getting that nice sunlight while it's still cool, crisp.
So obviously it's a beautiful vineyard site, which is now producing beautiful wine, per your analogy earlier. If we're going to talk about single vineyard cabs, the blends of different vineyards to create a certain profile. When we move into more of the direct-to-consumer wines that necessarily aren't in the store, that ends up being a little bit more of your playground, right, as a winemaker, just because now you can really kind of create the best wine from that vineyard site. What's your thought process on that? Say we just tried yesterday for the first time the Raincatcher Cabernet. When you think about producing the single vineyard things that are only available in our tasting room, how does that now change compared to some of the ones that are more distributed?
The idea is really just to capture that site as best as we can for the wine geeks, for the people that really want to explore and try different things, and they want to learn more about the El Pomar district, or they want to learn more about our Raincatcher vineyard. What is that? What is Cabernet from there? How is that different from other Cabernet? That's one of the real pleasures of working in Paso Robles, is that Cabernet can, because of the sub-AVAs, of course, we've got overall, there's just warm days, cool nights, a lot of calcium in the soils, but, there are these different climates that are throughout Paso, and so they can express Cabernet, and all the varieties really can express themselves in different ways. And so that's the idea.
Yeah, I think that our single vineyard wines that you can pick up at the tasting room, direct to consumer only, it's more about uniqueness. It's about a reference, a standard for that vineyard. And as Brenden says, it is a little bit more about the wine geek. You're really understanding that sense of place. On the other hand, it can kind of be a little bit of a pair of handcuffs for the winemaker, because Brenden feels like, wow, I could make this amazing if I took a little of that Cabernet and I blended it with some Cab Franc from this other property, or Petit Verdot from a third property, or of course are the very rare Bordeaux varieties, Saint Macaire, from even a fourth property. And that's really the approach we've taken with Signature, Lohr Signature Cabernet. It says Paso Robles on the label. Still has the certified sustainable seal on the back, but we're not stating a vineyard source. We're not stating even a sub-appellation on that wine. In that case, it's coming with the bona fide seal of approval of Jerry Lohr himself. His signature on that bottle is really the endorsement that gives confidence to the marketplace that this is the best that J. Lohr has to offer. And so we're kind of breaking the rules there a little bit.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because a lot of other producers, the most premium wine that they offer is it's from this specific vineyard, this row only, and that's all it is. But in this case, I can see now from knowing a little bit more about your jobs is that, well, if I'm only stuck to this one specific row, I can only do X amount of things, versus what if I just took the best from everything that we have and then got to really play with that there.
The whole breadth of our vineyard.
Interesting.
Portfolio.
Yeah, and it's something we can do because we have that brand equity, right? It's not only the J. Lohr brand equity, but the individual person, that Jerry Lohr himself, endorsing that wine. And with people that know and appreciate J. Lohr, they can get on board with that approach, knowing that we're really just putting our best game in this bottle.
I appreciate you guys sharing the kind of back end workings of your jobs. Keep your jobs. They will definitely not be after your jobs. If you want to taste any of the wines that we talked about today, especially on the Hilltop Cabernet. You can go onto our website, jlohr.com. But Brenden, Steve, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.